Okay, well, now we're going to talk about something that's near and dear to all of us and can get quite personal, even though I'm going to try to talk about Homo erectus and what actually leads to us. It'd be almost a better thing if we just tried to step outside of ourselves for a minute. And I don't know, I do something like this every time I research ancient cultures because I try to make connections and I try to distance myself from that. One way of doing that is coming at it from third person. Like I imagine the whole situation and I'm standing there, well, like an angel if you'll pretend, in a third person. So let's all pretend that we're angels. No, that doesn't work good. Let's pretend we're all aliens and we've come down to this planet here known as Earth, and we're going to see what the hell's been going on here. Now, if they're super Star Trek people, they're able to probably scan and find all the dinosaur deposits, every oil deposit, everything that's going on, and also every humanoid deposit. In fact, they could probably hit one little button and ding ding, and it would just turn around, and instead of finding all dinosaur or bone deposits, all of a sudden just turn it down to, well, these are all human and hominid bones, or they're related to these exact people. And amazingly, they could probably discern exactly how lineages happened out of everything. In fact, if they were looking at our current populations, they could pick a person out of that population from a certain part of the world and then also show it kind of magically. I wish I could do something like that in some type of CGI type of thing, and the way that I believe that it works out and the way that it went. But I'm going to try to talk my way through it and see if I can avoid from saying and things and stuff like that too much, like stuff like that, and see if we can get a better understanding. It's something that I had a long time ago, and I've thought of a million things to say to begin this off of, and I did so looking at papers where they're talking about how it seems like the out of Africa theory may be blown, at least as anybody would probably know it today. Because the out of Africa theory goes, whether you're with one group that says around 55,000 years a group, or the other group that says 70 or 80, or you want to take both of them and go, what if somebody went out at 70 or 80,000 and then 20,000 years later or more another group came out of it too, and there was a wave that came out of it. We'd be just happy with that too. It really doesn't matter. What does matter is no matter what they're talking about, there's already out of Africa Homo erectus like we're looking at here. And I just went down to a certain point and I said, I've got to start, this, or I'm just going to think myself into a hole in the ground. And just between you and me, some nights I sit here and I get ready for a video and I go through so many millions of thoughts, I forget a lot of them whenever I finally start the video, because in my mind I've already said that to you. And that sucks. So I try to kind of come at it, if I can, brand new a little bit, but then if I talk about little things and go off in left field, it just becomes a myriad of crap. Let's get into this concept here. So there's already Homo erectus well out of Africa before this period of time. And all these archaeologists and people tell you that modern humans, and that form there, so Caucasoid, Caucasians, came out of Africa. And different things happened. One of which is through interactions with a Homo erectus form who had deviated long before this and been out of Africa long before this, like Peking Man and such, had interbred with that form and ended up becoming a modern form that you would know of as Orientals today. There's a variation of a theme, and Denisovans and things have to do it. And Denisovans when it first came out, a lot of people said, oh, so that was the Oriental type, so we should draw them Oriental type. And then the first depictions of them didn't do anything of the sort. And it's just, well, how does that work? Well, it's also in all of these people, and they don't have any Oriental traits, so it's not what gives the eye trait, which is just a blending of an eyelid corner. If you took that off of them, it's very evident that they are really extremely closely related. One depiction, because there are myriads of them, hundreds, if not thousands, if not, oh my gosh, if you want to look at Homo erectus and just see all these depictions that they've done of them in different forms they want to give of them. A lot of forms like you see in here, maybe at the top right or even in the middle here, are shown already having pale skin. Down here in the middle, there's one that almost seems like it's got to be about a step or two before Homo erectus. The other forms, they show darker skin on, and then something just like it with a lighter skin, but some hair. A lot of the older depictions just wanted to put hair on everybody and all over their damn body because they were trying to blend the idea of coming from apes and so on and get people to believe it. But in modern day depictions, they don't show that at all, and it really just looks like the people were unshaven. In fact, if you were to take that guy that's screaming and showing anger right there at the middle top and were to shave him up, he would look a lot like, well, like an Eskimo type. But what they've done strangely to that guy is put these nostrils on him that are just huge. And I understand people get mad and they flare their nostrils some, but then they really have just taken a gorilla nose and put it on this guy and made him pale. Looks more Eskimoid or Oriental type, but he doesn't even have the eye fold. But he has that Peking man phenotype. But so that eye fold doesn't necessarily come from that. Doesn't have to. It comes along here somewhere, along with other traits that you would notice as Orientals. We notice that Orientals are now not as small as they used to be, but until recently they were quite a bit shorter. It's still shown in their stature somewhat. They're variations on a theme. We found in islands near there a pygmy type of person, and people tried to call it a hobbit and all these things, and insular dwarfism. Whoa, insular dwarfism happened to that, and so they were quite a little bit like others, but then not quite the same, and so on. That man's nose right there, if you tried to put it on that skull that was there to the left of it, which that's Flora's hobbits, by the way, but you would notice something strange. In fact, the nose that it goes, the cranium that it goes with, is that those nose apertures, the hole, is actually outside of the hole that's in the head, and it wouldn't actually kind of work unless, you know, in a modern day how we can squinch off our nose to keep water getting into it. You want to say that what they did back then was flare it all the way out, and they squish it out, and they had the ability to make it go all the way past that, but that's kind of silly. Did people have noses that wide back then or anything to go along with that? There's so many things they show about this, but I guess what I'm getting at here, in a long-ass way, is that there are so many variations of Homo erectus that you can see here. And some of them will look somewhat familiar to people that you even see today, and other ones look very much not the same. You find these depictions of this guy right here, and there's this actor guy, and I can't remember what his name is, and he looks a lot like him, and that's like Tommy Lee or somebody. And just go unshaved and go crazy and get on meth for a couple of days, and you'll look just like Homo erectus. But so you see depictions of the guys that look like this and variations on a theme, and what this shows is that Homo erectus had already done a massive amount of changing. So regardless of what your belief is onto it, Homo erectus was not one exact thing, and from that, ta-da, ended up popping out modern Homo sapiens. In fact, what came out of Africa was already modern humans. You'll see that, along with the ambiguity of it all, in quite a few of these things that it'll look at whenever you look at the out of Africa theories and things like that, and the modern interpretations of it especially. But they'll also tell you that they know that when they went out, they were modern humans. Why? Well, there's a Caucasoid type form that's found in Jebel Irhoud at 315,000 years, and that's in Morocco in North Africa, way back before the Sahara's green on and off and everything, way back. Appearing on before the last ice age and all of that, not the last one like we always talk about. And in that, there were already Caucasoid forms that went out of Africa. But when they went out of Africa, they encountered people. So how does that work? There must have been things that came before, and of course there's the Homo erectuses that went out, and we get that ideal. So it's a little different than a lot of people have a view of how it runs in a linear line. I've talked to a lot of people, and it's like, no. And the worst thing they could have ever done was try to put that little chart that goes and it shows a monkey starting to stand up and then turns into what looks like black people and then all of a sudden white people or something, because that got all kinds of people believing all kinds of things that really are not true at all. In fact, I've described in a couple of other videos, but part of that lineage that goes on now has already been shown to have been fake and faked by people. Another 2 of them that are on that little chart that as it runs up there, and the common one that you usually see, are not on human lineage, and they've already figured it out long ago. So they say we come from something, and if you want to try to blend it all together, and that's hard to do because it doesn't work out right. It can't come from directly like this, like people are trying to pull off, especially in a modern day and an all-inclusive society and situation. And we're all one and kumbaya and have a Coke and a smile. Now, whenever you check it out here, the connections that go back on some of these people on the planet actually go back to 2.5 million years-ish before they were really the same type of things. And like there's a variation of orangutan and chimpanzee bonobo and gorilla and all these different types that are going on there, these pre-Homo erectus creatures that we're all related to had come out of Africa long before we're trying to talk about when we talk about an out of Africa theory. Because whenever we came out of Africa in the part where I was talking about earlier, let's go back to that moment. Okay, you there? When we came out, all of a sudden, somehow, there's this warped variation called Neanderthal man that has such distinct genetics from us, it's easy to tell. It's not even like, oh yeah, he's like 99%. No. It's extremely distinct, just as Denisovans are. Now, we're realizing slowly and surely that we're all products of a lot of hybridization that's gone on. In fact, a lot of the evolution that is supposedly taken on really seems to be types of hybridization between archaic species that lived perhaps what we see today as the edge of the old world, and all that encompasses in between. But you get your variations at different points on the edge of the world, if you will. So there must have been a few things that intergressed with pre-Homo erectus that we haven't identified. They keep trying with this Lucy things and all these other things, but there must have been things that got together and clicked just right and ended up making Homo erectus. But Homo erectus doesn't seem to be just one thing. It has quite a variation on a theme, and from my understanding and looking into it, it doesn't seem like, well, it comes out in spurts where you would think that at this time they look like that in about 20,000 years, and then they look like that, and then 20,000 years look like that, and all the spreading and variation happens in its areas due to hybridization with things that are in that area that are already out of Africa. So this concept, even as far as out of Africa too, and instead of the first little idea where we're all the same, and then one of these people, they went out and then the weather changed and their skin changed and everything. No, really, seriously. Well, there's 2.0 where no, that's okay. There's 3.0 where they were all modern humans and they went out and all this stuff happened. Well, when they went out, guess what? There's stuff already there. So this just kind of makes that not, it negates it again and again and again, and people keep referring to it like archaic forms of it still are valid in some way because they haven't seen the progression since they've been in school. It's happened to me quite a few times in my studies here, going back into things and going, okay, well, it's like that. And they go, oh, no, they already found this and this. You never saw this paper and you never did this. And I'm like, whoa. I've had listeners literally put something in there and go, here's something, and peg it in there. And I go, oh my gosh, that's what I was looking for. I really wanted to. I even said in the video where I was like, I was trying to find 3 things to put together, and I found 1.5 here, guys, but it's still a great connection. And all of a sudden this guy comes and goes, here's what you're missing. Now, in a lot of videos, I don't talk about everything that I could talk about, because if I did and never shut up, we wouldn't get off the first picture. So let's just kind of leave that where it lies. If you've watched my videos long enough, you'll realize I can go out in left field all the way up in the cheap seats, to the point that I'm not in the game anymore if I allow myself. So we've seen depictions over time literally look like this. A monkey to try to be Homo erectus, or even some Lucy that would predate that, but it doesn't work out well. Modern forms, it's strange, but we have a lot of things that pardon me, look a little like Don Cheadle or so on, and there's a few more depictions that have a little of that appearance to it. Just one little phenotype that they give to it. I don't think it was influenced in any way. One wonders what all their influences were for different depictions, but there's Homo erectus in this form right here, and we can see something that looks a lot more consistent with things we see today. And then other forms of it that they try to show you look real inconsistent. And of course, Homo erectus now they found goes back 100,000s of years, a couple of 100,000 years older than they even thought that it did. But now what they're doing too is they're trying to take something that looks like this and call it Homo erectus. And so there's a lot of evolution and variation on a change that goes through on that. And really, it's not smooth. You can't put the pictures end to end and watch it just whoop into a modern day depiction in any way, shape, or form. There's a lot of big humps that go off into it. But you can see something that looked like us. But then whenever they show you that this thing couldn't stand upright and its feet had a thumb on it and things like that, it just disintegrates that idea. It's like you're going to have to find somebody that sheds that thumb foot in the Wayback Machine and all these other things that you're still missing. And then still it's probably not be perfected right. But hey, if we were those alien spacemen right now, they'd be all like, yeah, here it is. Picture to picture to picture to picture of concept. And their drawings would be more accurate. You see things that are like this, and it looks like, hey, they took most of the skin off a chimpanzee and then gave it a little humanoid appearance. They probably just took a blending program and took a regular human's face and a monkey's and put it between there, erase the nose, and tried to redo the nose at somewhat as a modern human, and they go, see, here's a monkey human. It's not going to work out that way. They're going to have to find the connectives. Now, genetics might find somebody in the Wayback Machine and be able to go, here's something, but at this point, we really don't have that true connective. Everybody's trying to act like they've got it figured out. Well, my little figured out is that Homo erectus isn't even the same thing. When you look at something like this, which is Demansy, Homo erectus Demansy, this version they found in Africa in this area they call Demansy nowadays. It's like those things, they get that weird name off of where, well, where the area today. Well, is that what they called themselves? No. Anyhow, so you'll see a variation like that, and then you see a variation that looks like some kind of, I don't know, Mongoloid type person. You might see a Russian that looks like this, and so on. Let me see if I can offend everybody. Right? Okay. But we're in third person. We're aliens talking about these creatures that came about. And isn't it amazing? Now, as aliens, we're just amazed by this, and we're realizing they got satellites in space now. So it's all cool. But you can see the radical difference between these two. If you can't, you probably need glasses or courses. Then we see variations which look like this, and it's funny they put so much hair on him it's actually sticking up in front of his nose and face and everything because of the program they use. But just shave that guy and he looks like that guy, right, that is here today as a Caucasian, whereas this we would definitely identify as somebody of either, I don't know, you could possibly go Irian Jaya, headhunter type, or the Australian Aborigines, or you would just say they're a Negroid type person, whereas this is definitely not the same thing. So when we talk about Homo erectus, it has a huge variation. And here's the Demansy skull, and the Demansy skull shows that it really doesn't have a chin on it, right? Here it is again, another variation. Huge teeth, smaller cranium capacity, bent back and everything, and there's a few variations in showing this. But those variations over time, let's just say, led to our modern humans. So even though Homo erectus they try to show you sometimes that looks like this, eventually going through some of these Homo erectus forms, we ended up with two people, not showing Eskimos or Orientals or people like that in this, but two people that look like this. They end up radically different than each other. And so we start trying to figure out how come they're radically different. How come they're showing this guy with no hair and this guy's got hair all over him? Well, this is a Homo erectus, and then they try to give you an idea that this ended up being this. That's not true, for this came from the one that looks more like Caucasians, Caucasoid forms of Homo erectus, and this one ended up being the ones that we know of as Islanders, Negroids, whoever knows what. When we take and we try to put it in a true timeline of things come out of this, there's that variation on a theme. I don't know if that's from the same skull, but this is that people have called it the John Cheadle look. They try to take and put straight hair on them, like an Indian somewhat on the right, or somewhat curly hair there, rather than saying that. Where does that come from? Other variations show a very nappy hair onto it, and other forms of it. Other forms will end up showing things like this. You'll see under Neanderthals and so on. And so this was definitely able to form out of hybridization. I get into again as I flip-flop on all these different limbs of ideas to end up becoming part of, well, everybody except for this form or this form of Homo erectus. Modern day, we have found that 20% of the genetics of modern day West Sub-Saharan Africans are from an unknown ghost hominid, and a lot of people say that's got to be this. Shown a recent video where they go back and show the Iweriru skull, and how, yep, there it is, and how that's not Iweriru, that's the other depiction, where it looks very much like Iweriru, and that is known as the earliest of the Negroid phenotype that they found anywhere. Dates only 9100 BC, and it comes through to 4400 BC, and then all of a sudden there's a radical change where it doesn't have the high brows and everything and thick anymore. It's a lot less prognostic, although it still has a lot of prognathism in it. But then also its cranium has gotten very much larger and goes from there. And they're talking about how that has reintegressed from people who had left Africa in that out of Africa thing, and then reintegressed back into it. Are you following me somewhat? And that their interaction with a Homo erectus that was still living like Land of the Lost in a time before time, unchanged, for no need to change, for it didn't run into all of the different things that the other people, it ran into its own set of things, but it did not run into the same type of things, same environments, same everything else. And then all of the variations, even before then, in modern humans that we see today, were going on separate of each other, but they derive from Homo erectuses that are separate from each other, and even in themselves show a dimorphism that is characteristic of already having been hybrids of other things at the point that we get any of the depictions we're looking at. You look at the variations on a theme of what we're looking at of all the Homo erectuses, and you can see things where you can say, well, that's a little more this, that's a little more that. It kind of leaves out the Oriental type look, but if we had an eye fold on quite a few of these we've been looking at, it would be more evident. One thing to be certain, Cro-Magnon is the earliest humanoid, or modern human, as we know of them today, that has a chin. You look at a lot of these, and they don't have a chin. Well, a lot of these skulls, what's missing a lot of times is the lower jaw and so on. They don't necessarily have a chin on Homo erectus that's standing out there. There's sure as hell no Kirk Douglas thing going on. If you have a chin, it's said that the Homo erectus type, and no one knows the full dating on that, must have had integration with the type that you are because you have a chin. Others think that it may have all happened just because of the losing of prognathism as you become a farmer and things like that. What discredits that concept is that there are still primitives today. Yeah, I don't know when you're watching this in the future or not, but in 2021 there are still primitives all over this planet, and there are other people on this planet that are already in space, and a huge variation on that too. But we're also trapped in a point in time where everybody's trying to come together, and in the process they're making idiots of themselves, trying to pander and say silly little things that really don't add up to the reality of things that we find out shortly later. If you're looking in time, we just went through 2020, 2021 is where we're at now, and yeah, okay, all right. So it might understand where I'm going here, but when we look at this and all these variations on a theme that are just Homo erectus, we're not going to go back and play Lucy or anything. You get something that looks very much where you could see a Roman in that. You could see things to other ones you can definitely see black type people in, right? Like this. And a lot of the others ones that we've seen, like this, and the ones there. Hey, we talked about this one in this other video I just did recently where he's got this buck tooth effect that might actually be, well, it's 140,000 years ago, and they're talking about how it's a remnant of Homo erectus that lived on in sub-Saharan Africa that really didn't live on anywhere else. Well, in fact, it didn't actually go anywhere else. This hybrided form that ended up being it stayed. A lot of the other forms were the ones that went out, and it's pretty easy to see which ones were which due to the way that history works out to the way things were. Right there on the left is another depiction of Demancy. It's done by an artist, though, and he makes full 3D depictions. It's pretty cool. So we can see these depictions that you quite often see, and it's variation on a theme. So the out of Africa theory that, even 4.0 is just really got to be busted by now to end up with all these things. And what we're going to find out too is that that evolution thing is really not as important of a kicker of the whole thing as hybridization is. We're going to find that hybridization, and you'll see this talked about more and more, as they recently talked about how we're all product of some kind of hobbit thing in the Lord of the Rings. Well, that's one weird way of looking at it, but then again, that elfin thing and where that comes from was kind of like that, and we would have said, well, early European hunter-gatherers, and the East meets the West, and these things happen, and that's how the brownies are being known and so on. But those brownies, by the way, every single one that they've ever got the genetics out of have blue eyes. Yeah, so that whole concept of that kind of goes out of the idea too. It really tries to peg it along with a gene sequence that they find, but that's not necessarily the definite pegger. Again, we find Neanderthal popping up out of nowhere, and he's known to have reddish blonde hair and green eyes. And they've always had those depictions of him, but lo and behold, whenever they did the genetics on him, they go, yeah, well, we were right. That's pretty cool, and they keep doing them. Although in a modern day, kind of look like Shakira and Chuck Norris a little bit more than don't they? So as we go through this more and more with genetics, you're going to find people being very kid gloves about it, and it's going to slow things down to a crawl somewhat, but there might be somebody with enough nuts to come out and try to describe what actually happened. Pieces of the puzzle are on papers and stuff, and you can tell that a lot of these people probably have it figured out or think that they mostly do, but don't want to put their neck out there because of the modern day society. You're a racist, even if you're a scientist and everything, and it's the truth. And it's not even talking about you. It's talking about things from 140,000 years ago, and it doesn't matter. It led to me, and it led to you, and da-da-da. Well, again, this is 2021, but there are primitives on the planet still. And there are spacemen. They're in space right now. Yeah, we've been doing the cool thing with Elon Musk, and they've been lifting off and then coming back and landing right back in that same spot. It's pretty cool. Just like we saw on the old Buck Rogers type things. We wondered if we ever get something like that going on. And with the new technology, being able to hold things upright, like people on those cycles that don't flip down and things, and keeps you upright, you can use that technology quite a few ways, but something we could have got into a long time before we did now. But I'm of the firm belief, because what we've found now is that between like sub-Saharan Africans, say, and the rest of the planet, we know that Neanderthals are interspersed, and Denisovans with some of these other people and so on. And now we found that there's a 19% unknown ghost hominid in sub-Saharan Africans that nobody else has. A lot of people have connected it to Homo erectus, which we see here, which looks very indicative. In fact, out of all the pictures and the closeness, you see a closeness with that. A lot of these papers I've been looking at, talk about how there were archaic species of humans, i.e., Homo erectus, still living on and extant up until the last ice age. Some try to click it off at 35,000 years ago. Geneticists can look back and try to see whenever things intersect, and they can see where it lays out, and they go, this must have happened about this must have happened about now. And they give it a timeline also of saying within 35,000 years, and that doesn't make any sense because Homo erectus died off long before on all the rest of the planet and became different things. Due to hybridization and such going on, it became quite a different thing. And, you know, people look at it as being racist and so on. And let me go back from the alien and get back into my skin just for a second here, people, and then I'll step back out, okay? So remember that I did that. But in stepping into my skin, I'll tell you that it really doesn't matter. Whenever we found out about Neanderthals whenever I was younger and stuff and the way they all aggressed, I had one of my friends was watching the show with me, and we would just watched a Nova show, Cosmos or something, and then we watched a thing about Neanderthals, and so he kind of said during part of it, he goes, so that's how we became spacemen, huh? And it was like, oh, you put the two together, but yeah, I guess over time it ends up being there. It really doesn't matter. What really matters is it's going to be more sensitive in the fact that at the end of all this, somebody's ended up becoming the heralds of humanity and spacemen and so on, and that there are still primitives on this planet and third worlders and so on like that. And so this divergence, and in a modern day we're trying desperately to get everybody smoothed out as much as we can, but we also realize that we shouldn't mess with these people that are rainforest dwelling in the Amazon that are still primitives, that are pretty much left untouched before the Mayans and stuff. We should probably leave that alone. Let alone if we just go and mess with them a lot, we could just give them a disease and they'll die from it. You know, you can get smallpox or chickenpox and shit, and it'll take them out. The Andaman Islanders and places that we know of, you know, Gilligan's Island type situations, far-reaching places still in the center of Africa, and places that people still to this day, even though there was colonization and everybody talks about it in the modern day, they still didn't really get touched, and still to this day you can still see, although National Geographic and other channel things won't really show it anymore. They say it's because of feelings. In fact, the problem with even trying to discuss this openly is because of feelings. But from my point of view, it really doesn't matter what the truth is. We're just trying to find it. Others might find this as different, and in fact even try to call science or anything, math, all kinds of things have been called racist recently. Again, this was made in 2021. So we're just at that point where we don't know the thing that you know now, because they've already done genetics, which they figured out how to do on archaic skeletons, and they're going to know now that, yeah, it's like Homo erectus. And whenever they do, they're probably going to say, yeah, well, some of that genetics looks like it's an all Homo erectus, and we all have some of it, and we all have some of that unknown hominid. Yeah, we do, because that came from a common stem, but then there's that variation on a thing that did leave that one that stayed forever and became modern sub-Saharans that's radically different than the other ones. Let's compare which one does it look like more. Can we find a match? Oh, bingo, here it is. So they found these different things. Let me step back out of this here again and go third person, as I already am. And they're going to find that. Y'all have already found it in the future here, and probably going, yeah, get to the point. Well, the point is that we're at that weird point in history where the truth can't really be talked about openly. And believe it or not, in America, that free speech that we've always had, to where I should be able to cite my opinions, which this has been an opinion piece on me as a third person alien view on the situation that I see in front of me as far as archaeology goes, and the current modern beliefs, and some of the newest things that we come to find out are inherent with different populations and their variations on a theme. This spreading apart at 2.1 million years ago, or whatever they want to give, is a common tree, but well far back. It's not this thing that happens just in the last few thousand years. It's millions of years ago. And there's a concept known as convergence. You can look into it, but it's where shrimps and things and lobster type objects have all become looking very similar. It's the reason cats all develop, even though slightly different in the first place, they end up being cats and so on. So we see that form evident in humans too. And it seems impossible for us to look at objectively because we're in there. And then, there's feelings and there's things that try to inhibit us from just being able to go, hey, what if it's like this? Well, if you're wrong, you're a racist and you're doxxed and everything and ruin of the world, and the world's big and round, it's going to blow up, and that's all there is to it. Don't you realize? Yeah, again, we're at 2021, so. But I'm going to go a little deeper into this, and as I look at all these papers, I find pieces that I can connect together and make a pretty good, like, Egyptologist 7 video, where I show you some things that really kind of show it at all. That's really her realm of doing it. I like talking my way through and using a few pictures. I really wish I could throw in more pictures and have a little snazzy projection going on here and all kinds of things, but kind of don't. If I had that going on, that's just glitter and stuff. It might attract some more people and keep some more people. But I'm trying to go off the cuff here on most any of these subjects and work off articles that really just give me a starter. And again, I was looking into this and a few papers that go along with that hominid discussion they were doing just recently, and some side papers, and that led down a rabbit hole into about 6 other papers I read through, and I decided to speak this. This is something kind of a variation on a theme that I thought of whenever I was a kid, that this must be the way it is, because whenever you see an admixed person or things like that, you can see a certain look in them, and you can find people from certain regions that look very similar to people from other regions that aren't supposed to be connected, and that was just in a modern time, right? And then trying to apply that mentally towards what we're looking at here whenever we look back and the way things go. And again, it used to say, well, this person, these people developed into Homo erectus, and then Homo erectus evolved into Neanderthal. Neanderthal went into modern humans. Well, we find out, here's one that didn't get any Neanderthal at all. In modern day, they say, yeah, they got a smudge. And that's from back integration of people who really didn't have much either. Cro-Magnon, if you look, was all around the Mediterranean. The Caucasoid presence is known in North Africa for, I'm guessing, and we're going to go with 315,000 years with Jebel Irhoud, but whenever they discuss modern humans came out of Africa, so where did all this evolution supposedly take place? Well, they want to say it all happened in Africa. Well, then how come what we are modern today all comes from evolutions that drive from hybridizations of different things that were all different from each other, that were already extant outside of Africa whenever that thing happened that you're talking about? Hopefully you followed me right there. Doesn't make any sense. How do you get a hybrid form of something that came out that ends up being a Neanderthal that's not spoken of at all, but he's just popcorn standing up here, and that was everybody's got it except for sub-Saharans. Sub-Saharans have this other that's 19% in them. Don't know who it is, but things are pointing to a form of Homo erectus that lived on extant, still lives on in their modern genetics in sub-Saharan Africa, that was secluded, didn't really interact with the rest of it. Much like you would think of as islanders, which it's easy to understand how an island could be secluded such as Australoids,